Okay, so here's a video on my generator. At first I come up with the idea video down here, and I was using this to try to get help to build a prototype. And somebody told me that I could use a microcontroller for my idea, and I ended up looking that up. And I was able to build this crafty prototype on my own without any help. But now I'm looking at help again. You know, there's some engineering that needs to be done. There's a lot of experiments that I'd like to do as well to get this generator really working. But here I'd like to get to the video and I'll explain to you how a generator works and how my generator works. And there we go. So I start out with this guy makes a video. This guy here makes a video on, there we go, on a simple generator. He just basically, let's see if he's still got it. Yeah, if you see right there, he's putting a magnet into a coil, and he's just going to shake the magnet and it's going to light up the lights. So that's basically how a generator works. If you pass a magnetic field, that is, over copper wire with some motion or some kinetic energy, as they call it, you'll create electricity, or at least a little bit of electricity. So my generator works the same way. This is my coil and my magnet, and I'm basically going to do the same thing with it just to show you that it's the same kind of coil that he's using. My coil, if you notice, is hand wound there, and it's not a full coil, so that I lose a lot of electricity by not using a full coil, and I'll mention that later in the video when we talk about my real generator. But here's me trying the same thing. If you see, there you go, it's lighting up a bit. It's lighting up a bit, so we'll see if I can skip ahead to... Okay, there we go. Now I got my electromagnet. And this is where I'm going to prove that an electromagnet creates kinetic energy. So it's kind of like you have to shake a real magnet to create kinetic energy. An electromagnet, you only have to turn it off or on. So that's completely different. It's completely different because you don't actually have to spin the electromagnet like we're spinning it. All you have to do is turn it off and on to create an initial burst of kinetic energy. And there it is. I turned it on and it created an initial burst, turning it on again. So it depends on the polarity. Depending on which way you wire the generator, positive or negative, it's going to be when you turn it on. If it's like positive, it's going to be when you turn it on you get the light. If the generator's of a different polarity, it's going to be when you turn it off you'll get the light. So when you turn it on, you get a light, and then you have to turn it off and you have to turn it on again and you get another light, then you have to turn it off and you turn it on again and you get another light. Or you could just switch the polarities. Like that's the other thing. This generator works in other ways. You could fluctuate the voltage, you can fluctuate the amperage, you can switch the polarities. There's a number of ways to get this generator working on a number of levels other than just what I'm doing. I'm going to switch up the power on and off. So I'm going to use that microcontroller right there connected to this switch over here. It's just a tiny little switch down under at the bottom of the video. It's not in there anymore, but down here will be the switch and the microcontroller. And see, I'm turning it on at like 5 times a second and I was blinking there. So I was turning it off and on at 5 times a second. Now I'm going to go to the microcontroller again, and I'm going to turn it up to 500 times a second. And this is where you see that this generator actually works. If we turn the magnet on and off at a rate of 500 times a second, we actually start producing some electricity here. So we'll see when I go back there. Oh, there we go. The program's loaded, and now the light will be fully on. There you go. The light's fully on. And if you look at my multimeter, it's 3.45 or whatever volts, which is not too bad. The battery for the magnet is 2.6 volts, so that's not too bad. Now this is where I get in trouble, because you want this to be like 20 volts and this to be like 5 volts. Like you want it to be at a ratio of like 4 to 1 or something, right? But if you notice, I'm not using a full coil. If I filled up that coil, that'd almost be double the amount of electricity. Plus I could use a second coil. I could actually add a second coil right on there. And because I don't have to spin this magnet, I can sort of extend it indefinitely. Like I can, and the magnet will still have at least some degree of a magnetic field. Like you'll lose force a little bit as you extend it, but you also gain another coil and maybe even another coil, which once again could double the electricity. So without even trying different materials, without even trying to experiment to see if this works better in hot temperature, cold temperature, or anything like that, trying different materials or anything of that nature. It already produces a positive amount of electricity from a hand wound coil and a hand wound battery, a hand wound magnet and a hand wound coil, right? So it's like, and then as I pointed out, I could probably produce like 10 volts, 15 volts, something in that. If professional could maybe even get 24 volts, and generators similar to that size. And the thing is, it's charged by a battery, and you have to charge a microcontroller, which is 6 volts. So normally generators are 120 volts, and charging a 6 volt microcontroller is no big deal. And then charging the magnet, depending on how powerful the magnet has to be. That's why you want it like 20 to 5 or something. So in this case, it'd be like 120 to 30. You know what I mean? So if you had a 30 volt magnet to charge a power 120 volt generator, that's kind of like what you're aiming for as a commercial equal competitor to what's out there. What makes this generator difference is that's free energy though. Right there, there's no gas, there's no fuel, there's nothing charging that. That's pure magnet power, pure electromagnet power. You know what's actually charged? What is actually creating electricity there is the speed of electricity itself. The fact that we can turn on and off that magnet at such a high speed, we're actually able to convert the speed of electricity into a magnetic field. It's like if you stuck an electromagnet into mercury, into like, if you ever, you know what they use in thermometers, mercury metal, liquid metal. You stick that electromagnet into liquid metal and you turn it on and off real fast, you'll start seeing all these waves. You'll start seeing the mercury being waved back and forth and all this disruption creating. That's kinetic energy right there. That's proof that it's creating kinetic energy, and you can convert this kinetic energy into, once again, electricity. And like I said, I could probably get 10 volts or more out of a 2.6 volt battery. So, you know, the idea is actually building this 120 volt generator, and then actually I have another way of doing it. If I go back to my generator, let's see if I can get back to that video. Whatever, I'd probably have to reload the whole video. Can't get out of it. But if you saw my generator where I had the electromagnet and I had the coils, what I could do to the coils is I could wrap another electromagnet around the outside of the coils. And then I'd put little spools around there and wrap those spools with coil to make it an electromagnet. So you put a piece of metal, a piece of iron metal again, and then with spools of coil to make it an electromagnet on the outside of it. So you have one on the inside and the outside, both producing electricity into that coil. So that once again could double it. And then even after that, you could add another coil to the outside, and then add another magnet to the outside, and add another coil to the outside, and add another magnet to the outside. That's another way of getting it. But yeah. So this generator is a big thing though too. You know what I mean? It could mean a lot to a lot of people. We're talking about like free energy where they don't have energy. This stuff, it doesn't cost anything. After you build the generator, it doesn't cost anything, and it has no moving parts in this generator. So you could possibly stick it into cars and mobile vehicles, mobile robots. You know, it could power the Mars space rover. You know, and the other thing about it is when you get it producing 10 volts of electricity, and you run that back into the magnet, like that magnet's only running on 2.6 volts. If you run it on 10 volts, it's going to produce more electricity. And if you produce more electricity, then you can run that back into the magnet, it's going to produce even more electricity. So you can create this like perpetual loop where the electricity keeps on increasing to a certain point. Like hopefully it explodes or does something cool. I don't know what happens. I never tried it with mine because it was dangerous, right? I'm not going to loop the electricity and have it build up in my bedroom here. So, but that's the big thing about this generator, is that it could mean a huge deal to a lot of people, and it's very easy and it looks very cheap to make, and it's, you know, my own unique technology, and I have where I came up with the idea. First I came up with an electromagnet that would produce kinetic energy, then I discovered all magnets, all electromagnets produce kinetic energy. I didn't even need a special one that I came up with. So there's a video. Give me a contact if you want to help me with this. I'm looking for major help in a major way from people. Thanks.